Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Jones Dixon is joining virtually. Audience members, I want to start by asking you to please silence your electronic devices. I would also like to remind you that in addition to the audience in this room, we have people watching and listening online, so please consider your language in comments and testimony today. Today's meeting is a hybrid board meeting. Some presenters and guests will appear in person and some will appear virtually. For those presenting virtually, please mute your mic when not speaking, and when presenting, make sure to unmute your mic and turn on your camera. For those joining us in person, to provide public testimony or to present, please turn your mic on when you begin speaking and off when you've completed your remarks. For all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. May I have a motion on the consent calendar?
So moved. Second.
Commissioner Brim Edwards moves, Commissioner Singleton seconds. Approval of the consent calendar. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you.
The voice.
The consent calendar is approved. Just trying to
Opportunity for public comment on non-agenda matters. This is a time for the board to hear public testimony, not for board deliberation. When it's your turn to speak, I will call your name and unmute you or call you to the presenter's table. I'll set a timer for 3 minutes when you begin speaking and announce when your time is up, at which point please wrap up your sentence. We're going to go virtual, and first up we have Les Poole. Les, you can unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, this is Les Poole. I grew up in Multnomah County, and I'm calling with some concerns about the Bull Run water filtration plant. Among other things, there has been a lot of property damage and public road damage and other things that have been well documented, but I have further concerns. The project started as a requirement to filter water to meet a federal EPA standard, and the cost was in the $500 to $600 million range. And I think with good intentions, the Oregon Health Authority dramatically increased the amount of chemical treatment and things that are going to be done there that were never required. We now have a project that's over $2 billion. The project involves, I believe, 11, correct me if I'm wrong, additional chemicals that have not been tested together that will be added to the water. And there's no real documentation of how the water will taste or what that's really going to mean to our health. I believe that the commissioners also have authority as the County Board of Health, and I frankly believe that we need to revisit some of the requirements that have been imposed on the project. Another large concern is the impact to ratepayers. This thing has become astronomical in cost, and what that means is ratepayers will receive 500%, 600%, 700% increases. So the project has been on a bumpy road, and there are aspects of it that just absolutely need to be revisited. We did get a visit at a meeting from Commissioner Vince. I want to thank him for showing up, and I will certainly be contacting the Water Bureau and you folks as well in writing to follow up on this. I think there's some things that really need to be revisited. I'll conclude with one final thought, and that is that we're getting close to a final decision on an Aluba appeal. And while I don't have time to discuss it, some of the conduct and actions and things that have happened during that legal process really raise eyes. So I expect to hear more about this situation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have in-person testimony. We have Charles Johnson, Jared Essig, and Lightning.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Charles Bridgetrain Simca Johnson, and those of you who are in attendance are going to start off with this snazzy little signature page. I may, for the first time up here, while enjoying the acoustics of this microphone, have to disclose that maybe I'm a lobbyist. The county, as you often know, there are many people who like to complain about trash around various sites. And the county has been wise enough to invest through the Homeless Services Department, going back to the JOHS days. Maybe, I don't think she ever signed checks, but perhaps acting director of JOHS Singleton helped get funds to Ground Score. And some of the people who participate in Ground Score are on the Lived Experience Council, which partners or is helped by Shelter Now. And so there's a cover letter and then 2 pages of people talking about desperate situations of poverty and underemployment. And I hope that in conjunction with this letter and my own personal views, we'll see some reinvigoration between the state, workforce development authorities, VR, to really make sure that people who are diagnosed or even just living as if disabled have just wage economic opportunities. Some of us who are physically able are very happy to go out and pick up trash along the 205 multi-use path and other places. But one thing that we get a lot of talk about crime here, but I think even when we consider about the victims, that crime affects a smaller portion of our society than people who are struggling in low-wage, under-supported jobs. So I hope that once we dispatch the National Guard back to their homes and let them get back to their regular jobs, that this county commission and the city council will work more tightly with Governor Kotek about economic and workplace justice for lowest income people. The creation of low barrier jobs is just essential. One of the things we talk about when we talk about housing here, but we never really nail down a number. How many people, we should have an easy computer-generated number on a dashboard that's available all the time. How many people are housed in Section 8 right now? And how many of those units are vacant? And then another number that's even tighter tied into your budget is how many units or households are getting county rent assistance, and what's the scope of those times. So there's a lot of intersectionality between low-wage work and those issues. We look forward to engaging with you more on this. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Jared Essig, Enlightening.
Good morning, Multnomah County Board of Commissioners and District Attorney Nathan Vasquez. If you're listening, my name is Jared Essig. I'm speaking for the citizens of Portland today who, in the city council meeting yesterday, just paid out $300,000 due to prosecutorial misconduct by the district attorney. The city's on the hook for that because of the so-called qualified immunity doctrine that shielded your district attorneys from culpability for their advancing a homicide prosecution on false premises. After the alleged convict served 5 years in prison for a homicide, he got out of prison, looked for the parents of the alleged victim so he could apologize, and then found out that the victim was actually alive. This is State versus Adam Gregg. So this was a fentanyl delivery that resulted allegedly in death, although there was no evidence that a death had occurred. That's why I'm calling on right now DA Vasquez to adopt the policy proposed by your Deputy District Attorney Kelly Rhodes and published in an Oregon Live expose last year on September 12th of 2024. Oregonian published this. Please read the report by the Oregonian. Excellent investigative journalism. Thank you, Oregonian reporters. Adopt the policy that you're not going to prosecute a homicide unless there's actual evidence of death. It seems like a pretty common sense policy to adopt, but the district attorney's office has refused to adopt that policy. This totally undermines the rule of law in this jurisdiction. It undermines faith in the prosecutors and the courts itself, calling therefore on the Board of Commissioners to compel the district attorney to act in this and adopt that policy. You need either a medical examiner's report or a coroner's death report or death certificate or some other affidavit testimony demonstrating that a death has occurred. Otherwise, you should not proceed on false premises. You should not proceed on knowingly defective information. This is a civil tort. We need to be able to hold our prosecutors and the police accountable. The Supremes have to revise this qualified immunity doctrine so that we can restore the rule of law and the integrity of criminal justice in America as a whole, and Multnomah County in particular. I don't know what else to say. I appeared ex parte off docket before presiding Judge Judith Matarazzo the day after the Oregon Lives expose was done, and she agreed to adopt the policy as a local court rule, and that needs to be institutionalized. It was a verbal agreement on her part, so I asked the county attorney or some other professional lawyer to help me follow up on that, because I'm just an amateur here, you know.
Lightning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Karma X1, X7, X3, 3, 3, 3. Now, one of the things I have about a problem with President DJ Trump is you originally agreed not to do anything with the East Wing at the White House, that is also my property. And the reality is that for the former First Ladies, that's where they had their office. And you had no discussions with them at all. And then during the shutdown, you decided to bring out the equipment and drop it right to the ground. And you were smiling when it was being dropped to the ground. Now, my question to you is this, is that when you were going to build that ballroom, you said you didn't need to demolish that. So we have a little bit of a misunderstanding here. I think that should have been left in place for the historical significance of that property and also showing respect to the former First Ladies. That's where they had their office. And you, President Trump, just dropped it to the ground like it was nothing. Now, moving on. Issue number 2 on Yang Hansen of the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, a lot of people are coming up with nicknames for you, but I've got one here that's going to benefit you throughout your life, and I think the company will move on this. Yang Tang Hansen. In the energy drink or the powdered drink Tang, that the company will give you one of the best endorsements you've ever had. And they are a large company, 30 different countries, multi-billion. And I think that is, if anyone's going to give a nickname, that would be the nickname to go with. Because you're going to get an endorsement from them that will be off the charts. Off the charts. And for a young, 20-year-old, that's absolutely amazing. So again, Yang Tang Hansen, that's the nickname that Lightning Super Karma is giving you at this time. Now, also pertaining back to President DJ Trump, I want you to start purchasing more companies with that CHIPS Act money. You still have $40 billion left. Micron. TSMC, please invest in those and provide that and let the public become owners of those companies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't demolish the White House, sir. Leave it alone.
One last call for Addie Smith. Let me check online. Yep, I don't see her here, so we can move on to R1. Budget modification number MCSO-004-26, state rebalance, Senate Bill 1145, community corrections reduction.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Commissioner Singleton moves, Commissioner Moyer seconds, approval of R1. So this morning, we're continuing the discussions on the budget modification process for the state rebalance. With this budget modification from the Sheriff's Office, we'll also be continuing conversations on a budget note that was put forward last week and was continued over for this meeting for discussion. So I appreciate the extra time and the additional ability to have conversations with Sarah Mullen at Lipsick and other partners. I'm happy to, John, can you give us a brief reminder of the budget modification that was? Why are we here? Yeah, why we're here, and then we'll open it up for conversation.
Can do. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. John Harms-Millant, Chief of Business Services with the Sheriff's Office. We are discussing budget modification to the tune of around $1.3 million. The Sheriff's Office is receiving less funding from the State Department of Corrections in this fiscal year than anticipated. This budget modification would move contingency to cover that delta. That money typically pays for jail beds here at the county. That's the long and short of it. Thank you.
So much appreciate the facts. All right, Commissioner Moyer?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to add a budget note to this resolution that comes from Commissioner Brim Edwards and myself. It is revised and was sent yesterday afternoon. Do you have that? Great.
Great, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All right, we have a motion and a second on a budget note to this budget modification. Would you like to explain the budget modification?
Sure.
I mean, the budget note, sorry.
What are you doing? I'm just kidding. Yes, this budget note is meant to help the Lipsick subcommittee talking about pretrial services. Well, it's asking them to help us in how we move forward. I understand that this resolution does not directly speak to pretrial services, but it is in lieu of the Sheriff's Department taking a reduction of which they had brought forward the potential closure of Close Street. And I think we certainly are spending one-time only money bridging this gap. I felt in order to support this resolution, it was extremely important that that bridge be to something, and that whatever direction pretrial took, we were going to need to make decisions with the best possible information before we adopt the 2026 budget. And so the contents of the budget note really speak to some of the considerations that it is our hope that they can discuss in a recommendation to what the future of pretrial looks like. And I know that we are asking for a tighter timeline than was originally considered. Again, this is not the full extent of the work of that subcommittee, but we are asking for an additional body of work on a tight timeline in order to help the commission in our budget process think about the future of how pretrial services are delivered. Again, this budget note says what we would like them to potentially consider. Certainly other topics and their expertise are welcome in those conversations, and certainly it is my hope that we can take a difficult situation and bridge it into what I am hoping is a beneficial change in pretrial services that best serve our community. Commissioner Brim Edwards?
I think I weakened the discussion. Likewise, in following the discussions we had about the rebalance, when the sheriff indicated, regardless of how we chose to rebalance the resources, that she intended to step away from that. Also in discussions with other parties, whether it was the public defenders, the judges that I spoke with, the DA's office, DCJ, there seemed to be a consensus that the current system was not the ideal system and that we needed to be intentional about for me that meant we needed to be intentional about our planning versus just this is coming, we're going to deal with it later. I think LPSC is the right place for the recommendations to be formulated. All the parties, sort of by statute, all the parties are at the table. I also want to speak to the considerations in that they were very deliberately designed to provide some guidelines, and I appreciate the additional ones that have been proposed. And I think we need to remember that we have a pretrial subcommittee of LPSC that does have, I think, a pretty diverse set of perspectives, that they should have the flexibility to come up with a variety of options that would then go to the full LPSC. And then I think those options, would ultimately come to this commission. And one of the things that I really want to prioritize is that we don't start the process by saying there's just one way to do it. I would hope that, it seems like there's agreement that the current system is not the way to do it, and there's better ways to do it. And I think Commissioner Moyer and I had a chance during a recent trip to Pima County to see what I would view, and by all accounts of very differing perspectives in Pima County, that they have a pretrial system that does enhance public safety and judicial pretrial equity. So this is hopefully the result of this budget note and the work of the pretrial subcommittee in LPSC will provide this commission with, I think, some really potential game-changing ways for us to look at how pretrial services are offered here in Multnomah County.
Thank you, commissioners. So we can have discussion on this. I'll open it up to any of the commissioners, Commissioner Jones-Dickson or Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to just appreciate again that the intent of this budget note I'm in complete alignment with. I do have an amendment for the budget note because we couldn't all work on it together. So I would like to make a motion to amend the budget note. And this amendment includes adding DCJ and the Sheriff's Office to the language because it's not just LPSC. So I wanted to explicitly name the other entities involved. It adds a check-in update to the board in January with the final report still due by the March 1 due date. And then it adds just some more kind of caveating language so that we're clear. It's data such as, but not limited to, the PSA score, for example. Looking at pros and cons of each option and just listing so that we didn't lose some of the intent of looking at the court system option, some of the other options that the LPSC subcommittee is examining. And then it's adding there's some steps that may be implemented before they're reporting back to us, so just adding some and/or have been implemented language. And then finally, the last piece around preparing a budget modification, we just made language more expansive, understanding it might not reach the threshold of a budget modification, but that should still be a part of their report back to us. And then lastly, it gets a little more expansive around national best practices, including but not limited to those outlined by the Justice System Partners Enhanced Report. So this, I hope, is seen and understood as it's intended, which is to expand upon the original budget note based on conversations with, I was able to have with the LIPSIC staff, with DCJ was able to review it, the Sheriff's Office was able to review it, also feedback from the Multnomah County Public Defenders, as well as the check-in I had with our district attorney. And so I wanted to just kind of touch those points to make sure that we were hearing from all of the involved parties. So I will, Commissioner Jones-Dixon, you should have this in your email because it was just updated this morning to reflect the changed, updated language from Commissioner Moyer and Brim Edwards' initial budget note.
So we have a motion on the table, and we'll need a second for any discussion on this matter.
Second. Oh, wait, I can't second, right?
You can second.
Oh, then I'm seconding. All right. All right, so we have a motion and a second for discussion on the amendment. So I'll just start. First of all, I just want to appreciate everyone who expanded the conversations on this budget note so that we could bring in different perspectives. And Commissioner Singleton, I appreciate that you also reached out to DCGA and MCSO for their perspectives on this. I appreciate everyone really focusing on the fact that there is a subcommittee that's talking about our pretrial systems right now and having a lot of this work be given to them since they have been working on this and continue to be experts from the different parts of the system on that. I'm doing a quick back and forth between the two.
And you all have the red line version.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So just a question, because some of these things I see as sort of maybe internal to the Local Public Safety Coordinating Commission, which is not an entity controlled by us, but rather it is set up in statute. I'm curious, the board, you've added, the board requests that LIPSIC informed by DCJ and MCSO. So DCJ by statute is part of LIPSIC, and the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office is as well. So that's just duplicative language, because I'm assuming they're going to be, they're on the pretrial subcommittee and they're also on LIPSIC? I'm not understanding.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. Part of why I did that is because the staff aren't the same, and I don't think it's just the LIPSIC staff responsibility to do this work and pull it forward. And so it was important to me to make sure that both DCJ and MCOS are included in what the board is looking at, because this is coming up not as a LIPSIC budget modification, it's coming up as a Sheriff's Office budget modification. So adding those to me felt like, as opposed to being duplicative, of being more clear about who's all responsible for putting this together and bringing it back to the board.
I guess I don't view this that we're going to be getting a report from LIPSIC staff. I view the pretrial subcommittee, which has the cross-section of experts on it, and then the full Local Public Safety Coordinating Commission would be providing it. Again, I'm not opposed to it, but they're already very much a part of it and by statute. So my assumption is, and this would go to all of the statutory members of Local Public Safety Coordinating Commission, that there would be engagement at a staff level, since we know that staff makes things
things work.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. I don't think that's been the experience on the ground. And so this is, for me, compelling everybody to engage and really support the Lipsick staff in pulling this together, because the budget note and this report is on top of the work that they already would have been doing as part of the pretrial services. So this may be one where we don't necessarily agree. I think I understand your point, but I don't, I'm not sure that I'm there. I still like explicitly calling it out.
Can I ask I don't know if it's a clarifying question, I'm not 100% sure, maybe if Sarah's here. Can we compel people who are not county to participate in something? I mean, because this is a statute.
So there are statutorily required members of Lipsick, and many of those people serve on different parts of Lipsick, including the committee. And so what we're doing is, Lipsick itself, though, in statute, is designed to advise the Board of County Commissioners. So this is a request for a board, a subcommittee of an entity that is in statute designed to advise this board to actually do that and advise us on a specific issue. And Jenny, do you have anything else? Or please correct me if I spoke incorrectly.
Well, I think it's a good question. And the word compel was used earlier. I think as I heard the word compel, it was to compel as understanding that the budget or the budget note here is requesting action, not compelling legally. And so, and I would, as I read this budget note is noting that the board requires additional information and is requesting of other elected officials and other governing bodies information to help aid in their decisions.
Thank you, Jenny.
So I have another question. There's a footnote that has a list of people after the pretrial subcommittee. Is that different than the current pretrial subcommittee? Because I would suggest we strike this, because it actually seems to imply that or that we just acknowledge that the Lipsick gets to define its own pretrial subcommittees. I mean, and there already is one, so I'm not sure why we're listing this.
So this was listed just to name who was on there, because if you're not on Lipsick, you have no idea who's actually on that subcommittee. So this is not any indication of like who can or can't be on it. It's who's currently on it, for awareness sake for the rest of us who don't have, aren't on those committees.
So thank you for the clarification. So when I asked last night, and apologize for asking the questions of the meeting, we got it last night at 5, because I was told that additional members were going to be added. But if you're saying this is these, and I saw the list yesterday, but it was names and email addresses, so I could somewhat sense of where they were. But if you're saying this is just matching the current committee, I think that's fine. And this doesn't need to be a change or anything, but I think we should also, with this body of work, if the pretrial subcommittee feels like, hey, we need expertise from somewhere else, that they could add that or inform it. Does that?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is not limiting, it's just defining. The footnote is just defining what that subcommittee, or the composition of that subcommittee.
great. And I think and that you're fine if they feel like, because there was this suggestion maybe that that we have a domestic violence victim advocate on this, which was a huge portion of, or like a significant portion of the discussion in Pima County about domestic violence, and like those individuals actually had sort of a separate approach to pretrial services. So you're saying that would not be mutually exclusive to add that? Okay.
Correct,
great.
yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
And excuse me, Commissioner Brim members, I apologize for interrupting, but I need to go back and fix a procedural issue here. I misspoke earlier, and the chair cannot second a motion. So if we can get a
Okay,
second
that's
from
it.
somebody else,
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Moyer. I'm glad, it's nice to know that Jenny Madcore sometimes makes an error, but that's why I was like, can I do this? I don't know. All right, thank you.
Can I ask a question about striking, prepare a budget modification? And then just, it says resources needed to do this work. What is that difference? I'm trying to understand.
It's just that I'm not sure that the dollar amount hits the threshold that it would be for a budget modification, because I understand there may be existing cost savings and/or it just might not meet that threshold. So I didn't want us not to hear about it if it doesn't hit the threshold for a bud mod, that they still tell us what those resource, excuse me, what those resource needs are regardless.
I actually have a question about this for both the budget note and the amendment to the budget note. Is this envisioned, so I think my understanding when we were first having this conversation that the March 1st date was to help inform considerations of what we will do with pretrial for the FY27 budget, but then both in the language in the amendment when it talks about mid-year budget rebalance, and then the original budget note talks about budget modifications, which to me are not, those things aren't necessarily, those aren't related to the FY27 budget. So I'm just curious about the intent for the budget note and the amendment around when, what this means in terms of what action this board might take impacting which fiscal year.
Yeah, I'll speak to mine. You can speak to yours. Commissioner Burnham Edwards and I heard feedback from LIPSIC staff about the resources needed to do the work of the budget note. So this is not a bud mod for pretrial, it's a bud mod for this planning work.
That might be premature.
Yes, okay, thank you for that.
Yes.
And Commissioner Singleton.
Agreed, and I think this, and I actually would look to Jenny, if you have any help here. This was some language I think that you had put in around the mid-year budget rebalance. Was that just to ground it in when this is happening?
I lost the thread.
At the top of the amended budget note, the first line says the board requires additional information to inform decisions in the mid-year budget rebalance. And this was language that came from you.
Yeah, the language there was just to, again, recognize that the board needs additional information from other elected officials, governing bodies, and individuals over which you don't have direct authority to command. But, so it was just to give us more information. And the timing was, I thought that it was to inform the decisions in the mid-year rebalance.
And I will say, thank you. I would add that the intent is absolutely for it to inform next year's budget. Adding a January 8 timeline was a bit for me, for us to say, okay, is this actually feasible, and start to get a sense for, is it 2, 3, 4 months into FY27, or is this actually going to take longer than the year that we're estimating today? So just trying to get at, it might take longer than a year, and we should have that kind of foresight.
So the January date is more of like a status report, like an initial scoping of what we think it's going to look like. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely.
Okay.
So another question, and this is about the resources. So if we're being explicit that we're adding the sheriff's office and DCJ, and that we expect other, and then when we have here that we'll be looking at the pros and cons of each options, returning to the court, consolidating under a county department, fully contracting out a community-based organizations, a hybrid. I mean, there's a whole host of different models that could be done. I want to make sure the resources then, if there's going to be resources, they're not just going to LIPSIC staff, because actually none of these options have the LIPSIC staff running pretrial services. And so I think we need to be cognizant that if, say, the decision is made to, and this is just for illustration, so it's not any bias, but say we return to the courts, like, I would expect the court staff to be very involved in that. And so it's not just LIPSIC staff needing the resources to do this. So actually, I'm just going to say, if we don't do a budget mod, which is normally the way in which the board would see how something is being resourced, if it's being changed to resources, that we be informed of how it's being resourced, because hey, sometimes when whatever entity's not in the room or not doing the staff ends up with the work. Yeah. And we just can't have that happen, because that will not lead to either a smooth transition or, I think, a successful system. So I don't need to change the language, but I very much want to know how we're resourcing it, and especially if we're looking to return it to something other than DCJ or the sheriff's office, that there's resources that also are available to the receiving entity. Because, like I say, the normal way we would see it is through a bud mod, and then we would have that discussion. But maybe that might not happen here, so I would very much want to know how that's being resourced.
Yeah, I will say, I prefer how it is in the amended version, just because it includes then the resources need to do this work very generally as part of the overall report back to the board, so that we then can consider, okay, who might need to be resourced to continue this work and implement this. And so this, I think, gives flexibility. Preparing the budget modification is not, I mean, that will take work, and we would want to pull in our budget team and that, but that's something that my office can help facilitate very easily once we, get a sense of what resources might be needed and how this board wants to proceed with that.
So, just another, and this is for purposes of discussion, is, and I was going to state this whether we had an amendment or not, so I'm just going to put it as part of the larger record, that this is going to be a very significant transition if we move away from the current model. I think that's a positive thing. I also really want there to be sort of the diversity of the opinion and perspectives at the table of people in the different parts of the system, advancing to us models that reflect those diverse perspectives. So I don't expect there to be like, hey, here's one option, but really to do the work. And I mean, as I've talked to all the different partners in the process, they all have their own perspective and challenges with the current system. And I want to make sure that what we're getting is sort of the full array versus here's one way to do it, and maybe that not being informed by taking into account all the advantages and disadvantages of maybe some of the other options.
Commissioner Jones Dickson, did you have anything you wanted to add to the discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you both, or all three of you, for bringing forth the amendments. I'm supportive of the second amendment that's been shared. The only adjustment that I would make, or only recommendation that I would make, is to the last bullet point, where it says pretrial, where it says prepare a budget modification for resources, striking that. I would go with the initial amendment. That way we have that information. And also I appreciate the intentionality as far as looping in DCSO, and I appreciate the intent behind both amendments.
Thank you, Commissioner. So any other discussion on the amendment?
This is one thing, and again, just for the record, since we didn't have a chance to either wordsmith or ask questions last night, in the bullet point that says pros and cons of each option, then there's a list of different places it could go. And I think this is probably representative of the major categories, but it doesn't say, for example. I mean, I'm assuming that there could be something else that we haven't thought of that they may come up with. So this isn't the list.
Yeah, absolutely. This came about initially because the first iteration of the budget note just listed returning to the courts. And so this was an attempt to not exclude that, but add some of the other options under consideration. So this is a bit of a holdover from last week's initial draft, but yes, this is a for example and should not be limiting language. But I did work with Lipsick on this to get the options that at least have been being studied and a part of some of the reports that we've received over the past month.
Yeah, because we, in our revised version, had taken out returning to the courts instead of just listing one option. So I just want to make sure for the record that this is not an exclusive list, it's a list of possibilities. And along with that, that the criteria here, we may get options that, well, some of these are criteria and other things are just things. I think is how I would phrase it. That not all the options might include everything. But that that we're requesting that some options include them. Sorry, it's
Which thing are you speaking to?
Well-
Are you still talking about the pros and cons of each option?
well, in any of the ones, for example, it says models that are in line with national best practices. So national best practices,
And it says including but not limited to those outlined in the Justice System Partners
Right.
Enhanced Practice Report. So it's not limiting.
Well, it would have to be a national best practice, even if.
well, what I guess what I'm saying is, I think these are guidelines we're asking them to request in some of the options, but it may or may not be in all the options. I looked at, just in preparation for our visit to Pima County, read through the Justice System Partners reports, and it's pretty extensive, and it could potentially, like some of them, like, or even national best practices, we may not be able to afford, or just, it may not work with our system. So what I'm just asking is that we're not telling them that you have to include this in every single option, like.
I don't think so, but I also don't think it's different than the original language, other than it kind of flips it around and adds the included but not limited to. So I guess I'm struggling with the question,
Actually, I was going to ask this question or clarify it anyway, because the lead-in language has, and again, I was going to clarify this with my own piece, but since there's an amendment and there's other things added, the lead-in language said, the board requests recommendations, we had, the recommendations should include options incorporating these considerations. And I viewed that as like, here are things to consider. And some of the options might have some things and some of the options might not. But that's what options are about. This language then was added, it took out the word, it took out should, it made it a little more directive. So I'm just wanting to make sure we have a shared understanding of what that lead-in language means about everything.
Yeah, apologies, Commissioner, you were talking about the last bullet point, and then, so I wasn't.
I was trying to use an example.
I was having trouble understanding what you were asking, so I got it. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is again, not a limiting, that these are the things that, from my understanding, we as a board want to have them consider and make sure that these are considered. I don't know initially, for example, if there was really a lot of consideration about returning it to the courts. So it's putting some of these options, this to me is these are things we want you all to do, and I don't think it's very different. If you want to put the word should back in there, I'm fine with that. I don't think it's limiting either way.
Okay, I don't think we need to add it back. Again, I was going to just make a statement anyway, because I wanted to be clear, again, I view that we have the spectrum of perspectives as part of the pretrial subcommittee, so I just don't want us to be like, hey, if you present something, that wasn't within this list, that's not allowed. So I'm glad we have agreement, and again, I was talking about the last one only as a sort of point of as an example. Okay.
Okay, thank you for that discussion. So I think, appreciate that. So now we'll do a roll call vote on the amendment.
To the amendment or the underlying
amendment.
On the amendment, and then depending on, right, so we do it on the amendment, and then we will have once that has been taken care of, either to pass or fail, then we will have a vote, we can see if there's further discussion on the budget note, and then a vote on the budget note.
Okay.
Okay?
Because they're,
So the budget note is not the amendment. The amendment is Commissioner Singleton's language on the budget note.
Exactly. Okay.
Commissioner Moyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Singleton,
yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards,
Yes?
Commissioner Jones-Dixon,
Yes.
Chair Vega Peterson.
Aye, the amendment passes. So now we will move to discussion on the budget note as amended. Okay. So we're now opened up for discussion on the budget note as amended. Is there any further discussion on the budget note? Okay, thank you. I believe we have, so we're still considering the budget note. Once we do the budget note, we're going to have a final vote on the actual budget modification itself, which John has so patiently.
I was like, I'm waiting.
And we do have public testimony on the budget modification, so we will, I know there are folks that signed up, so we will have public testimony on that. So any further discussion on the budget note?
Yes. So I just want to recenter, since we had a lot of wordsmithing and discussion and clarifying, and I just want to go back to sort of centering why this budget note for me is really important. Is I think it signals from the commission some intentionality about planning that needs to happen, how we resource it, how we actually tap into a diverse set of perspectives, and that also that is being done in a public forum. And I'm not saying necessarily like LPSC, the pre-town meetings are public forums, but the local public safety coordinating commission is, and I think that's just really important. We had practices where the deflection conversation did not happen in a forum in which we had a chance to discuss advantages and disadvantages of how it got structured, or even the criteria. So from my perspective, this is really important because I think our work is stronger when we have those discussions and that information in public, because sometimes people are opposed to things because they didn't hear the full set of perspectives, or sometimes they didn't understand, there's a lack of understanding of why particular budget items were included, or who was at the table. And again, it just is a much better practice to have this happen in public. So I'm hopeful that the commission will support it this morning, and that we will have a very successful transition to a pretrial system that both enhances public safety and also pretrial justice.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? Commissioner Jones, no? Okay, great. Marina, can we have a roll call vote on the budget note?
Are we going to do public testimony?
I'm sorry? Oh, we have public testimony on the budget note? Or budget modification?
Oh, on the budget modification.
Okay, so I'm going to do the vote on the budget note, and then we will go back to consider the underlying budget modification, and I'll invite public testimony for that. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Moyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton,
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon,
Yeah.
Chair Vega Peterson.
Aye, the budget note passes. Okay, great.
Just for the record, the budget note as amended.
Oh, thank you so much. The budget note as amended is approved. Great. All right, so now that we have a budget modification with a budget note as amended added to that, we will go back to discussion on the budget modification itself. Thank you, John. We do have public testimony on that, so I would, Tasia, can you please call that?
We have Charles Johnson and Lightning.
Hey, I'm pre-trained Charles Simca Johnson, and as if all that wasn't enough fun, the APR for this is 9 pages, and then there's something else. The APRs maybe sometimes get up to 4 pages, and then there's 5 pages of spreadsheets. I'm really before we get to page 5 of the spreadsheets, I'm super curious if it's a number bigger than 0 of people who've actually been through pretrial detention and pretrial release that are involved in this conversation. So some of you work in circles or participate in circles with the phrase, a very aspirational phrase, nothing about us without us happens. And I'm not exactly terrified, but concerned that the restructuring of pretrial release has maybe 0 people who've been through pretrial release and detention, arrest in Multnomah County. And that's a no bueno. So I'll be, I think there's a side conversation. We'll get to that later. Let's go back to page 5 of the spreadsheets. What the heck is going on here? Everybody's fund code is the same, and everybody's cost object number is the same. But there's a big spectrum of numbers from the last one, $81,472, all the way up to 3 people, I'm assuming the people, right, FTEs, whatever, at $209,000. Now, obviously, we don't have a time to get super into what needs to, flex dorm, how much staffing and stuff is involved, what level of correctional officers are there. But it would really suck if the 209,000 people times 3 are all white men and then the rest aren't. And I have a fear that that's how things work in corrections. That maybe, it doesn't have to go in the budget note now that we work so hard to smith that, but those of you who are worried about real DEI and workforce representation, I hope that you can also maybe add a little personal note to find out what that means, that the different positions on page 5 of the attached spreadsheet range from people, I think these are employee costs, so that includes their insurance and everything and their retirement of $209,000. And then some some less fortunate person who maybe their annual employment package is maybe only $81,000 a year, including not money that goes to them, but that pays their insurance and such as that. So thank you very much. That's enough.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Karma X1, X7, X33, 33. I do approve of the Bud Mod for planning work and to inform the next year's budget. One of the concerns I had today is on the consent agenda, which I think pertains to the budget overall, on why you did not pull C2, which I think affects when we're talking rebalancing budgets, the overall budgets, you didn't even put this on the regular agenda, which is the Property Values Appeals Board. And I think it's one of the most important topics that we have when we're discussing rebalancing budgets and understanding our property tax revenue and why we might not be receiving what we think we should. And you didn't even take the time to put it on the regular agenda. And again, like I've stated before, is that when you're rebalancing these budgets overall, and I'm talking every budget, is that if you don't take into account the national debt of 37 trillion, and why I always refer back to that is that when we're paying $1 trillion interest, if you just take 50 states to divide that into $1 trillion, that's $20 billion that then you take and you implement into each state of savings. And when we're talking 20 billions coming into the state of Oregon, if we just look at the city and the county, we would double your budgets, meaning you'd have 16 billion at the city and you'd have 8 billion at the county. Would we even be talking about rebalancing any budgets? Again, that's why the national debt is so important to understand the overall effect that comes down to these counties and the cities. There would never be a rebalancing of the budget. There would never be that if we would understand the 37 trillion in debt and begin to buy it down appropriately, which I have stated that you want to use the Lightning Super trifecta, which is buying into Blackstone, Vanguard, and State Street. And when we, the people, buy into that, we can begin to buy down the debt at hyperscale, because we will control any and all tech companies in the marketplace in super AI. And the reality is that we have to do that now. We have to do that when we're talking all this rebalancing of budgets and we're talking about the president who doesn't want to fund you the money. It has to happen now. We, the people, must buy into these companies and control the corporations.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on the budget modification? Okay.
Chair, I just wanted to appreciate all the staff and particularly the Sheriff's Office for coming back multiple times and really giving us the space and time we needed to work through the impacts of this and understanding that you know, the Bud Mod is usually a little bit of a simpler process. And so just want to respect and appreciate your time that you have continued to come back. But again, also a bunch of other staff from other departments have been really with quick turnaround time on the information we all needed to bring forward these budget notes and the budget note amendments. So just appreciation for staff today.
Thank you, Commissioner Singleton. Anything else?
I was just saying, I'm supportive of this. I wasn't supportive of the initial plan because I felt like it did not reflect the input of the Sheriff's Office around their operations, their budgets, and how they were going to be staffing. I think we got to a better place, and I'm appreciative that the Sheriff's Office really pushed back on the system. I think the everyone within the system was aware of the challenges with pretrial, so I'm glad that got surfaced. Often we just kick the can down the road, and I don't think we did that in this case. And so I'm appreciative that we landed in a different place from where we started, because I think this is both better for the Sheriff's Office, and we're starting some important work with some intentionality, not with some intentionality, with intentionality to get to a better system.
Thank you. I'll just add, I also want to share my appreciation for staff, both from MCSO, LIPSIC, the other departments who have, you know, as we've been contemplating both the budget modification, what's the best way to address the deficit we had with the updated numbers around $1145 to continue to provide the services to Multnomah County that we have been. I do think that both, I mean, this work right now is about FY26. We're going to have further conversations and have to circle back and address some of these issues in a bigger way for FY27, especially because this contingency funding is one-time only dollars, right? And that's the nature of this work. And I know that one of the reasons the sheriff had put forward the ideas around closed street supervision is that those were ongoing dollars. So, you know, this is definitely an issue that we're going to have to come back to. I want to appreciate Sarah Mullen and the Lipstick team for the work that they've been doing for over a year on the pretrial system, and I do think it's a good thing that this has been, shared more broadly with the public through this process. I'm looking forward to the updates on this, and I know that this is something that I'm very interested in as I'm starting to work on my budget for FY27, and I know it'll be very important for the entire board as we consider the full budget. So thanks for that. And with that, can we have a roll call vote, Tasia?
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vague Peterson?
Yes, the budget modification is approved. Thank you, yes. And just as a reminder to the board, we have one last budget modification that we will be considering next week on Thursday for the Homeless Services Department. All right.
R2, second reading of ordinance moving the Office of Diversity and Equity, Chapter 25, into the Department of County Management, Chapter 7.
May I have a motion?
Second?
Do you want?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Brim Edwards moves. Commissioner Moyer seconds. Well, I can't make it. That's been made clear today. Approval of R2. All right, so this is a ordinance that was brought forward by Commissioner Moyer. This is our second reading on it, so Commissioner Moyer, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I think I've spoken to many of you, if not all of you, about what motivated this ordinance, which is an underlying concern brought to many of us over the last year that our diversity and equity work is not making it down to the front lines. And I think we've seen that backed up by the employee survey, retention numbers, and other issues. I don't have all the answers. I certainly don't think that there is one right approach to this, but I did want with this ordinance to signal that we have to do better, and that we have to address the issues that have led to this feeling to some employees like a performative commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and not a integral part of how this organization functions. And so the intention has been, how do we create that structure that helps the work of the office, the work of the entire organization be more consistent, be more systemic, not feel like political gesture, but be at the core of what Multnomah County is. And I still do believe fundamentally that ODE should not be in non-D. I'm going to be honest. I don't think a lot of offices that are in non-D should be in non-D, because I view non-D as largely intergovernmental and political in nature, not how the county operates. I certainly support the chair's right to meet with, confer with every office she feels, or he feels need to have regular interactions. But I do think it is important for us as a board to start engaging in this conversation from a place of there are, and again, I don't necessarily know if my approach is the right one, there are things that are not working. We have heard from employees, both in one-on-one conversations and in front of the board and from employee resource groups, that there are inconsistencies, there are double standards, there are actions that go unaddressed that continue to make people in our county believe we are not living the values that I believe this board has repeatedly supported. But in recognition that we are in a hiring process right now for a new director of the Office of Diversity, Office of Diversity and Equity. Sorry, I want to make sure I get that right. I am going to motion to table this until that position is filled and that we can have a board work session around, so I would say that I'd like to have that board work session after that person is given a little bit of time to come before us in a relationship with their, with Chris and the chair to talk about how we're going to institutionalize this work, how this work impacts and will impact the experience of frontline workers. That is it, I have concerns that we talk about this in terms of management, and I do agree that managers play a very significant role in how welcoming, how culturally relevant, how affirming a workplace can be for people who have traditionally not been welcome, but I don't think it is the only factor. I think that there are policies, I think that there are inconsistent applications. I would like to pause this and give that new director and our COO in relationship with the chair some time to bring their vision forward. And potentially this is not a necessary action, or as it has been suggested by others, it should be part of a larger action, which I hear and I agree with. I didn't try to bite off too much, but I'm very open to other people biting off more than I was willing to do. But I'm not going to leave this issue. So I am asking that the board be willing to postpone this ordinance indefinitely in the hopes that we return to this conversation with our new director, hopefully with a vision, and maybe what's brought forward does not need an ordinance change. I would say I think the language of the code is pretty outdated and should be updated. Or if we are unsatisfied with the approach, we return to the conversation.
Just to clarify what I'm seconding. It's a motion to postpone.
Yes, indefinitely.
Okay, I'll second that.
All right. Thank you. So we have a motion on the table to postpone R2 indefinitely, a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm going to be supportive of this. I do think it needs further discussion. Sometimes the item is not yet ripe, but I do think it's a discussion that we need to have. Just since the day I started here, how our equity and inclusion work is integrated into the work of the county has been an issue. And I think we need to understand what the structure, the best structure to optimize what we're trying to accomplish in the county. I do have just a question for the chair. I think when we had this discussion earlier, we were given an org chart that showed that in practice, the individual is reporting into the COO?
I don't remember that specific org chart, but the way that the office is currently operating is that the interim chief diversity and equity officer is reporting to the COO, and ODE itself sits in Nandi. And it's similar to the structure that, for instance, Chris Voss in emergency management, which is a Nandi office, is also reporting to the
But
COO.
in practice, the head of it is reporting to the COO.
Yes, and that change was made, Chris and I had that conversation, and, really it was my desire to make sure that the CDO is very much incorporated with the executive leadership team at the county.
So my,
CDEO.
Thank you.
I know.
so from my perspective, the fact that that's the current structure is an acknowledgement that that position really should be integrated into the professional and the departmental organization of the county, versus a political, it's not a political position. It needs to be working sort of across the county, and the best way to do that, I believe, is also not just say that they're going to be, but to actually be positionally in that office, and the people that work with them also be in that same space, because I don't believe it's a political position that should report to the political leader. All of what I know generally is when you bolt something onto an organization, often it doesn't become integrated, it just remains bolted on, and it's very challenging to drive change, especially transformational change, when you're bolted on to an organization versus integrated into it. So I welcome the future discussion about this and the updates to the ordinance language, which should happen regardless.
Thank you. Other discussion on this? Commissioner Jones-Dixon.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Moyer, for putting this forward. I'm in full support of, just postponing this until the new director is, until he or she joins the team. I'm reminded of, Director Dr. Perez and the work that she's been able to accomplish over the last year and the success that we're seeing from that. So I'm looking forward to the progress. So thank you, Commissioner Moyer, for putting this forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Moyer. I'm also in support of postponing this, so I'll look forward to the vote. I think a couple of things I would say is, having served as a chief equity officer, there is a lot of different ways that this can work. And so I have seen it work where the person is in a political office, like my position was with the governor. Because the governor directs the budget, we then were able to actually do a lot of work at the department level to ensure that the budgets were being developed by people who are impacted by the program and who are Black and brown throughout the state. That's, I think, part of why you hear me keep saying, what's the demographics of this CBAC? How are we doing community engagement? Is that if we're not actually doing that work, that's how you operationalize equity to me. And so, yes, this person's ability to do that within the county enterprise may be better positioned in a different place, but I fully support having the new person come on and really understand their vision and how this can move forward. And I would say, I would hope to see recommendations more than just where they think positionally they should sit, but actually how we operationalize equity. Having done this also at organizations, there's some low-hanging fruit that I'm not sure that we've even addressed. I don't know if engagement is an implementation of equity initiatives is actually included in job descriptions, which then means you can't hold staff accountable. So I think there's a lot of places that we need to really dig into to look at how equity will be operationalized at Multnomah County, and I look forward to that work session and would love to partner with you on putting that work together, because I think it's a critical conversation for us to have. So thank you.
Great, thank you. So I got a couple of comments here. So I'm going to support the motion to postpone indefinitely. I think this very conversation is exactly why we wanted to really, as a new person was coming in, to have that the role of the Chief Diversity and Equity Officer to establish a new structure so that they can be incorporated right from the beginning and be more deeply incorporated with all of the work that is happening across the organization, really with like how can we make sure that just as we're doing with many other things that equity is deeply embedded in the one county approach and that people's experiences across the organization are similar, right? Because we know that is not the case now. And so I appreciate the partnership with our CEO, with Chris Neal on that. I also think that we're in the middle of it has been a very robust and very successful recruitment process. So there were some but interviews happening this week that many people took part in at the county, including some of our community partners. We had such interest in this position, so I'm very excited to have the new person come on board. And so I do think that person, I expect that when they come in, they are going to be very excited about the potentials here, the work, and will want to work closely with this board as we're talking about what equity looks like for our employees, for our programs, for our departments, our communities. So yes, we will definitely have that conversation. I did want to point out one thing, though, about everything that is contained in Chapter 25 in the non-D. The structures of all of those things are put in there because past boards have put them in there, have taken action, have passed ordinances to create them in the way that they are structured, which obviously means, of course, that this board also has the power to change it, but it's not something that, like, the chair decided that emergency management should be non-D, or the chair decided that Office of Community Involvement or sustainability, for instance, should be a part of those things. Like, that is actually past actions that boards have taken to create those non-departmental offices, because those were the priorities of past boards, because otherwise the structure of the operational and the administration does fall very much in the chairs and the CEO's purview, right? Because that's basically how the rest of our charter and ordinance functions in terms of operation. So yes, it's very much a board conversation about what those different non-D offices look like, because they're only there in the way they are because of the actions that the board have taken. Okay, great. Did we?
I don't understand. Okay.
Actually, I want to just comment on that, because I hope that comments about, anytime I have comments about, like, the chair's authority, it's not specific. And so I really appreciate you raising that other boards have made those decisions. So it's not personal, and we're also not those boards. And I say, just looking at the language of the ordinance, it's clear that happened a while ago, and it should be updated. And so I hope that the comments aren't taken as, like, this specific point in time, but also we can't be bound by, because a previous commission got engaged in a practice or approved something that we're in agreement that that's the right structure going forward to deliver on our goals. And this applies to a whole host of things. Just one of the things coming into the county is that I'm glad this commission has been very interested in looking at our rules and our governance structure and how we operate, so that we're structured in a way that we can most effectively utilize the talents of the full commission and also deliver for the county against our biggest challenges. So I hope that this discussion is not specific to the current chair, but just the structure generally.
Yeah, and that's why I did say in my comments that it's very much in this board's mission or in this board's things to establish those. But I did want to point out, like, it wasn't. These things very much specifically were at one time or the other the priority of the board to add into the code in this way. And if you look in the actual, like, our county code itself, it actually has, like, kind of the dates of the last board action, and some of them are old. So yes, very much that, but it is Commissioner Moyer, you had said something that made me think that, like, or gave the impression that, like, it's up to the chair that these things are the way they are, and it was actually passed forward. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. I do think, and I did say this when I brought this forward, and I continue to feel very strongly about this. I have a difficult time with the way the county does not strictly adhere to language in code. That is something that I have a strong opinion about. I don't think code is optional. I don't think you can stretch it. When a code speaks specifically to something, and you want to do something different, which I think is completely appropriate, that does require a vote in my mind, because it is, I have now addressed at least twice concerns that our actual practice is not what is in code. I talked about the purpose of the tag versus what they're actually doing, and the reporting of where the director of ODE reports. Do I understand that, again, times change, there are reasons to do things differently? Absolutely, which I guess would be a little bit counter to the deference to previous boards, but I really, really want us as a county to treat our code as law, and that if we wish to change something, which of course we should do, I think that is important, to look at the laws that bind us, and if they no longer are the best way to function, we should change them. I do think that we have to treat code as the binding law of Multnomah County, and if we want to do things differently, we need to change the code. That is my strong personal belief. And I feel like we have a little bit of a fast and loose relationship. We don't even have a consistent way that we update our code when we change it. That is wildly concerning to me. We don't have a consistent way of making sure our code is in compliance with state law. Like, these are things that, to me, maybe I'm a nerd, I did choose to get a useless master's in American government, that is not best practice. So this is a conversation about institutionalizing to a deeper, more granular level the policies of diversity and equity, but it is also about how we operate as a county. And so I leave it there. I still support my motion to indefinitely postpone, but I don't want to lose that, because I don't want to live in the 1980 Multnomah County Board. It certainly was not nearly as diverse as this board. But if we want to do things differently, I do think we need to address that through code.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones-Dixon, I didn't know if you had any comments, final comments.
No.
All right.
Just looking forward to the new hire and moving this work forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Tasia, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Moyer?
Yes.
Commissioner Singleton?
Yes.
Commissioner Brim Edwards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon?
Yes.
Chair Vig Peterson?
Yes, the motion to postpone indefinitely is approved. Okay, so we are going to move to a work session. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess so that we can move down to the work session format, and we will reconvene at 11:08 or 9. Thank you. Okay, hello, thank you. We are back after a short recess in our work session format. So R3, do you want to go ahead and, well, I guess I can just read it out. It's a non-voting item. R3 is the federal impacts work session.
R3, Federal Impacts Work Session.
Thank you, Tasia. Okay, and so this was brought forward by District 2 to have a conversation about federal impacts. So Commissioner Singleton, can you kick us off?
Thank you. I just want to appreciate everybody in advance today for this conversation. I think you've heard me on the dais a couple of times talk about that as a board, we haven't really had a conversation about this federal regime and how we may have policy direction to share that I think would be helpful to departments and the work being done at that federal work group to really figure out how to move some of this forward. The hope for me today is that we don't get bogged down in a lot of specific programs or particular agencies that we may partner with, but that we keep the conversation focused on our priorities, thinking about the entire county enterprise. I continue to be concerned. I've had great conversations, but I will say I continue to be concerned about the work to evaluate our policies and programs and thinking about moving forward. I don't think there's anything we can do to avoid scrutiny from this regime. It's clear that it doesn't matter what our policies are, what our programs are, and how we're investing. We are a target just like any other Democratic led city, county, state. There is no kind of hiding from what they're going to or have already imposed on us. The idea of them already taking away dollars that were allocated across the country, frankly, even including in Republican spaces, that they're taking dollars away that had already been allocated by Congress. So I guess to say that I want to be really clear that there's places that we may have concerns about some of our culturally specific language or programming, and I think it's important that we take a lens of what data do we have to support culturally specific investments, because we know there's really high disparities, for example, in the criminal justice system. There's a lot of places, I think we have a lot of data in our health department that clearly shows where there's health disparities. And so doing some of those specific investments where we can still stay on the right side of federal law and strict scrutiny, I don't want us to be preemptively getting rid of things that may warrant us fighting a little bit harder for. I've shared before a number of pieces that they've already targeted us with, not just us in Multnomah County, but with my community in general and people who look like me. The fact that this government will continue, the federal government will continue to come down on us, whether it is some of the anti-trans work and language that they've pushed, the dismantling of DBEs, banning books, the ICE activity that we see, and the fact that they're allowed to racially profile is just absolutely bananas. So I say that to say, I know there's a lot with the federal government, and I really applaud the work that the departments and the COO's office has been doing, but I think it's long past due that we as a board have a conversation and give some input into how this work will move forward and give them some policy direction. I did ask Justin to join us because I know we just had a briefing about the federal work group, but there might be some specific pieces just to kind of ground us in what that work is.
Hi, everybody. For the record, Justin Black, I use he, him pronouns. I am Deputy COO here. I'm going to touch on two things. The first is the anti-discrimination work. So we gave you an update during our last one. We have progressed in that work right now. So departments have done the assessment of kind of flagging policies or programs that they have questions about that need further review. The county attorney's office has worked with them to review those. We still got a couple departments that we're working through that on, but now we're in that, okay, we've had a program level review, we've had a legal review, now it's coming to the COO's office to do a review as well to see where action might be needed. I think I do want to make sure we have not done anything yet. Like to get to the, we have not preemptively made any changes to programs or policy. So we are still reviewing, kind of seeing what the the whole scope of that work looks like. And we'll come back with more updates on that as we have that information. The second thing I want to talk about is grants in general. Because they've been so high profile, you did a budget modification on them on a couple of them last week. To date, we are still involved in 2 lawsuits around grants and the federal administration there, one around DEI and one around sanctuary jurisdictions. Those lawsuits continue. The grants where we have lost funding so far, we've lost them because the federal government has just terminated the grant period for everybody. They're just not doing that work anymore. So that's really been what you've seen so far. We expect a lot more of that. The administration has made a lot of changes in how they do granting. Political appointees will have more say over who gets a grant and who doesn't now. That will impact us just like you were talking about. So we're gonna see more impacts in the grant space as we continue. So will the state of Oregon, given kind of our demographic and who our representatives are. So that work will continue, and we will try to assess, mitigate, and bring forward all of that information as we kind of know what it is. We have been very careful to not preemptively bring stuff. We're trying not to react to press releases. We're trying to wait until there's actual guidance from the feds, that we know what the impact is going to be. We are trying to be slow and purposeful about this and do change as little as we can. I think that's it. So those are my kind of updates. Happy to answer any questions or talk about more.
Yeah, no, thanks, Justin. I appreciate that. And I do think that this is, we've had briefings and tried to keep the board updated, but this is a really important piece for me to hear, where are folks at and where are your values and priorities as the CO's team is moving forward with this work as we're doing this. I will say I had a conversation with the DA earlier, and they're very much as well for grants, looking at the language and what's in there, and there's some, and it feels like it's been a bit inconsistent from the federal administration, because there are some grants that had language in there that seemed to preclude us from being eligible, and then the grant comes back and that language is no longer there, and so this is something that is happening. This work and this look is happening all over the county.
So I really just want to open space for my fellow commissioners to really talk about your values, your thoughts about how we should be approaching some of the work that this federal work group is doing, and just really broadly around where you stand or think about how the county should show up with the federal government.
I am largely in agreement that there is no, and I'm not implying we're doing this, but there is no capitulation that is going to change this administration's feelings about this county and this, our biggest city in our county or our state as a whole. I also think many members of our community are incredibly vulnerable, and capitulation threatens their safety and ability to continue living their lives. I am not only concerned around to what degree we change language. I have consistently said, not because I love how the courts have interpreted different language, but the courts have ruled over the last decade or so that we cannot do race-based preference. And I do think that we have not always communicated in a way consistent with their rulings. I don't agree with their rulings on those issues. I think pretending that we've achieved racial equity is ludicrous. But I want to make sure that we are balancing appropriate language changes due to actual federal law, not this administration's interpretation. And we need to do that. But how important it is for our community to feel like we are not capitulating, which I'm not saying we are, but I do think, I'm going to be honest, because some of our neighbors have, anything that we do that looks like that, I get very nervous about. And I don't want to send that signal because it will achieve nothing. And two, I think it sends a signal that some in our community are not worth fighting for, which I don't think is where this commission is at. But due to some actions of others, I feel like that's hard to distinguish. You know, I tend to also lean a little bit toward doing things even if we don't think that it will result in change, because it is the right thing to do. I am very aware of the Supremacy Clause and very aware that we do not get to tell the federal government how to conduct their law enforcement activities, but I also want to make sure that we're doing our part to counter the narrative of their behavior. It is not okay to kidnap people. It is not okay under the US Constitution to deprive any person, regardless of their immigration status, of due process. I don't mind doing things like fining for poisoning the residents of my district with nightly exposure to dangerous chemicals that have never been tested for repeated exposure, many of whom are children. I'm so horrified. Do I think that they will comply or pay that fine? No. But I don't want to just say, hands tied, because if we don't push back and let the world know that we are standing up for the Constitution, that we have a role in public health, they can choose to ignore it. I'm aware they don't have to, but I would like us to be more aggressive with calling out the things that we believe the federal government is doing that are illegal to our laws or the Constitution.
Absolutely, and illegal and harmful to folks. And I would say the one piece that I know I irritate the attorneys on, so I will just acknowledge I did this at the state too. I drove poor Dustin absolutely insane. But we can do race-specific investments when we have the data to show the disparities and meet that high level of strict scrutiny that's required. And so one of the questions for me is that a part of the analysis that's happening before anything would happen with any of the programs that are coming up here? And if we don't have the data, how are we flagging that so that we can have a conversation about where we may need to make investments to do some disparities data studying in our FY27 budget process? So that those pieces still feel a little disconnected for me that I want to make sure to flag.
Yeah, so I'll just go off on a little bit on that. So what we're also looking at is, as there's kind of two buckets here. One is like how we talk about something. And there's that work. And then there's the program specific, how you actually do the work. And one of the things that this has required us to do is to look at what our desired outcomes are and to really kind of center it in like, okay, so we have program X that we're trying to do why with. Are we getting to why? And really get there. And that gets into that conversation around what is the data we have around the program? What are the disparities? What are the outcomes? So it is forcing some of that conversation, which is difficult and not going to be quick. I'll be honest there. So, and I think we are learning in some places we don't have great data. And we know a program is right and it's there for a reason, and we know there's a disparity, but we don't have a great deal of data that shows us this community has been adversely affected by this percentage and that. So we're working through some of that, and I think that is going to be some of the follow-up conversation that we have with you all is we have this program, we don't have great data. We are right now kind of prioritizing one class of person over another. How do we do this? And what feels right and what looks right, and then what is also, limits our legal liability in that program. So yes, we are working through all that, and it's not going to be quick.
I completely appreciate that, and I'm glad that's a part of the conversation. And part of, I think, what gets hard here, right, is we don't necessarily have line of sight to that as a board, and I don't think we need to be overly involved, obviously, in operations, and this is one that feels a little bit more squishy, because frankly, I think the role of attorneys for a government body is to avoid risk, right? And sometimes the answer is we're going to do this anyway, even though we're going to get sued. And I want to make sure that we're clear as a board where our values lie because that is a decision that the chair gets to make, but that if there's not alignment on the board, or frankly, if alignment on the board is we do think there's places we should take risk, and the chair doesn't want to, and that disconnect, it feels like we'll never know when that's happening. So I don't have a good answer for kind of how these stay in the loop moving forward, but that was part of the catalyst of me wanting to have this conversation, is how do we bridge what feels like is not just an operational role, but requires some at least generalized policy direction.
And I will just respond, like for me, as we get to that, so right now it's at the CO's office, so I haven't even, it hasn't even come to me. And I think what it does, I want to hear from the CO's team, our leadership, our legal, all of that, but work closely with the board on any potential policy changes that are happening, because this is really important, and it is both it's very much an operational internal thing, but like we know the impacts are external, and I want us to be responding in a very, in a smart way for the county, but also to Commissioner Moyer, I can't say how much I support the points that you made of like what this means and the stances that we take mean for our community in this moment. And I think we should, I think I'm very proud of the way that Multnomah County has responded and stood up and shared our values, and I don't want to take away from that.
Just going to sort of build off of some of the comments already made. I do think it would be worthwhile for there to be a statement of principles from the county commission, because I think that sort of centers and guides our overall work. And this isn't a criticism, because every morning you wake up and you look in your news feed and there's something new. But I think we need to bridge to and transition to something that's a little bit less of like random, like just reactionary responses. So I think if we have sort of our statement of values, and that is both a message to staff about how we're going to operate, but it's also a message to the larger community about what we stand for. And again, I don't think it has to be long, but I think it's just needs to be clear. Because I do really feel like there are two audiences. There is the administration and the federal government, our delegation, but there's also our community. And in some ways, it's very different messages. I think when we're communicating with our federal delegation about what we need to give them the facts. They're there every day on the ground. They should be our advocates, and That's one thing. And then our communication with our community about what our values are, what we're standing for, because often it feels just very lonely for people. And it's one thing, as somebody who has a lot of privilege, to get up and look at my news feed and see like all the terrible things that are happening. It's quite another thing to be the person or individual or community that's targeted by sort of the attacks or the cuts in funding or just the very vitriolic rhetoric that's coming out. So I think we should try and be more intentional, but always like be pivoting back to how does that connect to our core values. You know, I think if we do it intentionally, we will be more reassuring to our community. I know, for example, yesterday there was a city and county communication about the SNAP benefits without a lot of time to review. Also, I thought there was a potential really to extend beyond just the city and county to other partners who, you know, may actually have connections also with that the administration might listen to. That it's not really, to me, it's not necessarily a political issue. The food assistance. So if we think about like where are potential alliances and places in which we can communicate most effectively, I would like to see us, again, having sort of something that we can anchor our work around and also try and be more intentional even in this environment if we can.
I really love the idea of a board statement, and I think that's feels really different to, I think, an earlier point of some of our neighbors have taken a different approach, and I think that this would be a great next step for us. So I'll definitely work on starting a draft and pull in comms team and see if we can get something in alignment across all of us, because that would be really powerful to me, of folks knowing the whole board is behind this comment, this statement, these values. I think would go a long way for community members.
I also think the more that we can pull out really specific examples of impacts to give to our delegation, but also in our communication, then I think it has more, it's more effective because we're talking about real people, real impacts, versus we just think this is a terrible thing, which we do, but it's also, I think we have to lay out really like how this is impacting, because I think those impacts are not just on blue cities or, you know, liberal Democrats. They're having impacts on, you know, very diverse populations across this country. And so the more that I think we can provide that specific information to the delegation, they're armed then with real facts and evidence. And to your point, Commissioner Singleton, when we have evidence and we know that we can use that, we definitely should be pushing that out there so that people will feel confident that they can be supportive of actions we're taking.
Commissioner Jones-Dixon, I know it's a little hard sometimes when you're up there to make sure that you're included, so I want to give you space to add to the conversation if you want.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to build off of what both my colleagues have said so far, all of my colleagues have said so far. I continue to think about just what leads to action, coordination, and connection. Before I say all that, I just want to say a huge thank you to Diana for the updates that she's been sending out, and to just, again, build off of what Commissioner Brim Edwards has said. It's just like how I just want to ensure that we have the tools to talk, or the information. I'm gathering information from my community, the community members here in District 4, and talking to folks that are talking to directly to the White House to help paint that picture. But to have like a collective statement is extremely important, and also it'll help us hopefully move things forward. So those are my only. I'm still in the middle of a whole bunch of other things, so that's all I have to contribute for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones-Dixon. I think to your point and to Commissioner Brim Edwards' point, like I just read a headline where Trump is no longer contemplating sending troops to San Francisco because some of his friends who live in the area called him and asked him not to. So it's like, who are the, right? I mean, which is not anything to do with a rule of law or, an actual, a real real need for anywhere. It's who has the ear. And so I don't think it is, I don't think that it is, misplaced to like say like where can those conversations happen? And I think again it is a struggle to think of how Oregon as a whole, Multnomah County and Portland, we can change perspective in the mind. But I think in something like SNAP, SNAP shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should not be. Food security should not be. We know that folks are going to be impacted by this. Hundreds of thousands of people just in our state, over 100,000 people in our county, and that is, and it is a very real thing.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, I think everybody is asking themselves, who are we? And I get deeply offended by the rhetoric that to stand up against what is happening is un-American. I think it is exactly the opposite. I cannot think of a more American thing to do than defend our neighbor, believe in the value of the diversity of this country. I really want us, particularly Oregon and particularly the Portland, Multnomah County region, because there is an international spotlight on us, not that we asked for it, but it is here. And I could not be more proud of our community's reaction to just intelligently reframe the reality of who we are versus how this administration wants to talk about us. I think about that on a deeper level of not just how we show up at protests, but how are we going to show up as our community suffers because of the actions of this administration, and how do we draw that contrast? It is both the moral and right thing to do to figure out how to be there for our neighbors in a totally unnecessary crisis. But I also think within the context of defining what is American and what are American values. There was a great quote that I saw the other day that was about, you can move to France, but you don't become French. You can move to, Ireland, but you're not Irish. This is the only country that you can move to from anywhere in the world and be an American. And I believe in that. I mean, I have just been so blown away by how so few generations back we are all immigrants except those who are indigenous, and yet are treating people who came for the exact same reasons our lineage came as if they are criminals or parasites or somehow not seeking what everybody has sought who has come to these lands. And we need immigrants as much as we have ever needed immigrants in this country. I think it's interesting. I have been vocal about my critique of the way Echo Northwest talks about our local economy and some of the conclusions they make that I don't think are actually supported by the data. But they did actually point out that we did see growth in 2023 in Multnomah County because of international immigration, and that will flatline, that will go to zero, and that it was good for our community to have that growth. And it is harmful to not have it, and I certainly think that's true. I worked in the construction industry. I am very aware of how important immigrants are to that industry. And we are absolutely not going to be able to build the housing we desperately need without that skilled workforce. And so I don't know what the right combo is, but the idea that we could lead a counter narrative, and obviously not just us alone, that is both other governments and organizations, but like what opportunity is there with this attention to show a counter narrative of what American values are in this community? I don't know. I mean, is it to organize around getting food? I mean, is that the big gesture that we like talk to our faith leaders? Oh, sorry.
Can I respond to that before I lose my train of thought? I think we're doing that in practice currently. You know, as a board, at the beginning, we said we're going to look at our board rules. We're going to look at how we do our work. I think we're attempting to do that in practice. We have the AOC conference, the local AOC conference coming up a month from now. I think that looks like us talking. I think some of us have already started it, talking to the commissioners on the Republican side from like Columbia County and Marion County and throughout the rest of the counties and what have you. So I think just continuing to practice that and then also telling the truth, the whole truth, but not allowing the lies that are being shared to define who we are or gaslight us or what have you. That's why, again, I'm extremely appreciative of the work that is that's being done currently. And also it's an opportunity for us to get disciplined and work with everyone, like the 4 cities and the city of Portland or what have you. So I come back to just the practice and then truly identifying the issues and the challenges that the most vulnerable are having within our community, which is what we're mandated to do anyways. So I'm grateful for this moment. Because we get to show and continue to build America's favorite county. But we just can't, again, get distracted by the things that he's doing and or saying, because it's, you know, like Joe, I'm going to pause there. I'll pause there. So that's what comes to mind when I think of what you shared and the things that we've been diving into over the last, 7 or 8 months. And I'm sorry I have to leave in 5 minutes, but I'll be here on my headphones.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes.
I appreciate those pieces. I think there's a couple of things. One, I just want to kind of clarify, because I love the sentiment of we're all immigrants, and I think it erases Black people's reality that some of us are descendants of kidnapped, enslaved people. And I think that there's a lot that we can do around I just did this training about how to resist authoritarian governments. I think we have to be, I'm just going to be very blunt about, this is clearly authoritarianism at the federal level right now. And part of that training was like you stand up for things, but then what's underneath it, and gets to exactly what you were saying. How do we organize around food security? We made a statement yesterday. Now how are we showing up and helping support? How are we pulling in advocates and community groups so that it isn't just about a political statement, but it is about community and what folks need and want, and that we're centering their needs in how we're showing up as a body. So I would love for some of that work to happen. I feel like we always get stuck in the how much we can or can't do with how many people on the board. So I will just acknowledge sometimes it feels really tricky, and I don't want anyone to feel like I don't think they are in for the fight if I don't connect just with them. I think I'm trying to always be careful of, maybe this is a thing that Commissioner Moyer and I make sense to work on, and maybe there's things that make sense for other folks. But if we can have these kinds of touch points, even if it's non-board agenda item comments, to say this is what we're doing and this is some of those pieces, so that other folks can support, build on, be a part of wherever we can, that's how I think we can at least all stay informed and get to some action.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good step to move forward. So I appreciate that.
So in addition to all of that, and a statement of principles, I also think, and this is sometimes more challenging. But it's like, hey, we got a statement done where we've let them know, people know how we feel. But how can we be taking action other than expressing our values? I mean, I felt yesterday after the SNAP statement, it's like, what else is what is our community going to need? To see, like, is anybody planning, or is it just so overwhelming, like there's no planning happening, or is there planning happening? And that of what we do if people don't get their food assistance by the particular deadlines. And so what resources, and this goes to Commissioner Singleton's speaking to our community partners, like, where are those conversations happening? How can we either plug into those or lead them, or get the community plugged into them? Because, like I say, I felt yesterday after, like, okay, I said this is a horrible thing. You just look at the numbers, but what are they going to do with this? If you're one of those people, what are you going to do with our statement? Other than, I know my people are fighting for me, and I'm about ready to lose a critical assistant. So I'd love for us to be thinking about how we can do that on the things where we have a role or can play a role.
Thank you. So Commissioner Jones-Dixon, I know you needed to leave in a minute. Your hand was up, so I just didn't know if you had a final comment or not.
Not a comment, but just another question. I probably missed it at the beginning for Director Black, and then we can go back to what the statement that Commissioner Brim Edwards made. Is there any direction that you need from us at this point around the work that the work group is doing? Just so we know.
Thanks, Commissioner. I don't think there's any direct we need there now. I think a statement from the board will be helpful to how we navigate kind of some of the questions we have. You know, I will say in my work plan, we're going to do some proposals and kind of socialize them to see how people react to them before we make any decisions. So, you know, I think our number one goal is to keep you all informed about the work as we move forward and make sure we're not making decisions that are out of line with the board.
Great, thank you, that's clear.
Thank you.
And I think I just wanted to, Commissioner Brim Edwards, that's exactly what I was talking about, is like that mobilizing. So there is some organizing happening around food and food security. I know that you're here to listen, but I know you also had done some outreach. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Stacy, our GR director. Is there any particulars that you have updates you want to share about food? But also, and please do. And I would say as other issues are coming up, that's part of where I was saying, like, how can we bring that up in board comments so that folks know how and what is happening and how we can engage, and how are we leaning on what might be happening through some of what I think GR is tracking.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. So I think right now we're reacting to, I'm sorry, thank you. Stacy Cowan, for the record, Stacy Cowan, Director of Government Relations. Thanks, I'm new here. In real time, folks are reacting pretty quickly. So maybe I'll just remind folks that even though that we have seen shutdowns before, we have never been in a moment where the federal government did not move forward contingency funds to cover SNAP benefits. So this is new. It caught folks by surprise, maybe just in the last 3-4 days. So what I will say is that we're hearing from our federal delegation, there is still time for the federal government to release contingency funds, and that had been part of the advocacy and the push. And just now we're in active conversations about what does community support look like for our food banks. And so those conversations are happening simultaneously, and some of those pieces are just coming together right now. So I think our hope is that we will still see in the next 8 days some additional funds to carry us through, while also hoping that we see an end to the federal shutdown soon as well. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacy. All right, anything else on this before we move to board comment?
Again, I want to thank everybody coming in here. I mean, there were some assumptions I could make about where folks stood, but it was really helpful to actually hear from everybody and understand how much alignment we have here. So I really look forward to putting together a statement of our principles and values, but also having you all as supportive comrades, frankly, in this work as we're doing some of this community level work and engagement. So just thank you for being willing to have what what could have been a really different kind of conversation. So I just appreciate how everyone showed up today.
Thank you, and I appreciate you bringing this forward to have like this in a discussion format as a follow-up to the briefings. Okay. Thank you. So that concludes our regular board business. So now we have time for comments. Thank you, Justin. You can skedaddle on non-agenda items. So I will open it up to commissioners to see who has items to discuss. All right, Commissioner Singleton.
I feel like I can't say always every week, but thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge, I know we just had a whole conversation about the federal government, but also want to acknowledge that over the last couple of weeks, we've heard continued escalation in language and how federal officers are showing up with nonviolent protesters at the ICE facility. My staff has been there and multiple occasions and seen and heard some things that are extremely aggressive, often racist, and in the face of it, people continue to be there peacefully protesting. The food security piece, I would just say, I'm definitely going to continue following up. I have concerns about pressure on food budget means that people are going to buy food over rent, and we've seen reductions in rent assistance from every single level of government, and so I have very big concerns about lack of eviction prevention and potential spikes in homelessness for folks, that even when the pressure might be around the lack of food assistance. I wanted to give just kind of a brief update. I think you all had some conversations directly with Jillian about the HRAP 2.0 plan, but we had our steering and oversight committee meeting, so we discussed that plan. Commissioner Moyer, I really appreciated getting to see the incorporation of some of the behavioral health things that I think both you and I felt like were missing, so thank you for digging into that work. There is we're going to need to have another meeting to talk specifically about the KPIs. So I just wanted to acknowledge that some of that work needs to continue before it will come here for a vote, and just make sure you all understood and know as well that the conversation at Metro about SHS KPIs have a lot of alignment with the KPIs in HRAP. So you'll see a lot of similarities in those two bodies of work as it comes forward. I think last week I shouted out the city of Portland both for the Protect Portland resolution and codifying sanctuary status. It was a really quick one, so I just want to appreciate Councilors Avalos, Canal, and then a number of folks who also then supported that work as it moved forward for taking that step and taking on the leadership of that work. Similarly, looking at, with my office, is working with the chair as well to look at opportunities in where we need or should either be updating our resolution around sanctuary status and or putting something into code. And so more to come on that. This is one that I really am frustrated about serial deliberations on, because I know other people have a lot of input. So we'll set it up. I think that there's a work session to make sure we hear from everybody as that work moves forward. Just want to appreciate folks who came out for football with the commissioner, which is my non-Eagles Sundays. I will watch other teams play. Begrudgingly. And just want to appreciate, we were at the Mule Bar, and Paula, the owner, was just so gracious and wonderful. So I wanted to shout her out and just appreciate the support that they gave us in holding the event there, but also allowing an Eagles fan in a 49ers bar. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., we have a grand opening celebration for Kafore Court. I'm excited to speak about this housing. It's a critical need for our Black elders in my district. It's a development by Portland Community Reinvestment Initiatives, PCRI, and supported by Colas Construction, Black Community of Portland, and Northwest Pilot Project. This will bring in 40 new apartments that are permanent supportive housing, so really excited to get to be a part of that opening tomorrow. And then this Saturday in the King neighborhood, we have a cleanup event hosted by Union Trucking and Union Community PDX from 12 to 4 at King Elementary. So folks should come out and support some neighborhood cleanup. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Singleton. Any other updates? Commissioner Moyer.
I just wanted to give my thanks to a staff member who is leaving my office. Chad Lyken has been with me since before my swearing in, and I am incredibly grateful for the work that he has done. I am excited for him and his family's next journey. They are headed to Amsterdam. I think I'm jealous, but I wish him just an incredible adventure that I hope this is. I know that he feels torn leaving our country right now, and he is actively searching for ways to engage the expat community while he is gone. But he will be missed in District 1's office, and I am just incredibly grateful for everything that he did with his time with us. It was such a pleasure to work with him and have him as a member of our team and a thought partner and a genuinely great guy.
Thank you, Commissioner Moyer. He will be missed. He has been great to work with over these past months, and I actually started learning chess on Duolingo because of him. So, Commissioner Brenner, any announcements? Okay, I have a couple of announcements. One, I did want to just appreciate everybody who on the board who signed on to the SNAP joint statement. We had the entire Portland City Council and Mayor. We had community partners, SEIU, Portland for All, ACLU of Oregon, Worth Fighting for St. John's. And again, it was really reiterating the what Stacey Cowan had just said, calling on the Trump administration to immediately release contingency funds that would allow SNAP to remain funded regardless of the federal shutdown situation, as has been past practice. You know, I will say it was kind of staggering for me to really understand that almost 1 in 5 Multnomah County residents receive SNAP benefits. That is a huge, huge percentage of our population, and this is going to have very real impacts. And I had a meeting yesterday morning with some of our services providers in the youth and family systems who said exactly that as people make choices to buy food, they are going to be taking those dollars from paying their rent and some of these other things. So this impact is going to be felt not just with potential hunger, but people losing housing and places to stay. So we need the funding of SNAP right now. We are seeing absolutely an increase in ICE activities throughout our community. You know, between the reports that we're getting, I wanted to share some of the ways that my office has been working in response to the surge of ICE in our community. So at the beginning of this month, my office learned about an incident where a federal agent interfered with and threatened an ambulance crew at the ICE facility. My office heard about this incident from several individuals and immediately reached out to our EMS team, the union representing the ambulance workers, and AMR to understand more. And while this specific incident is currently being investigated, I just want to acknowledge how much it has shaken the EMTs and paramedics in our county, and which we've heard about firsthand in conversation with those workers. And what we've also clearly heard from them is that they want to be neutral in their work. Their job is saving lives, and it's absolutely unacceptable for them to be met with threats or any impediments to stand between them and the safety of the patients in their care. So I wanted our paramedics and EMTs and other first responders in the community to know that we appreciate their critical work and are committed to protecting their safety. Since that time, my team also visited the ICE facility to speak with a volunteer peacekeeper there who also happens to be a former Multnomah County employee. So we learned more about the on-the-ground conditions and also some public health concerns that were raised, so we're following up on that. According to the volunteer, the day my team visited also coincided with a pretty clear shift in strategy by the feds when the 100 or so right-wing agitators or counter-protesters that had been stationed there all left at the same time. So very coordinated effort there. We're seeing now that having failed to instigate an incident at the ICE facility, the federal administration is really ramping up ICE activity within our community across it. Just this week, there were confirmed reports of ICE activity near Adler Elementary, Highland Elementary, Gresham High School. Not only are the majority of the students at these schools Hispanic or Latine, they're also part of the county's Sun School system. Since then, there has been reported ICE activity near other county sites, including our WIC clinic in Rockwood, which Rockwood Hall also is where our PFA team is located, and near a site serving migrants and refugees. These actions, we know, are not about safety. They're about sowing fear in our communities, and we're already seeing the chilling effects that it's having. The actions go far beyond what would be considered normal, much less what is right and just. I want to emphasize that no child should ever be afraid to go to school, and no family should avoid connecting with the resources that they need because of fear, and unfortunately, that is exactly what is happening right now in our community. So I want to take a moment to extend my gratitude to the county staff and our partners in responding to these incidents. At a Portland Immigration Rights Coalition, AKA PERC, they did a Negro Watch training this week, and the trainers there praised Multnomah County staff for their calm and prepared response to the ICE activity at the WIC Rockwood Clinic. I met with PERC this week and my team, and they also mentioned that to me as well, so I just really want to give a shout out to our employees there. My team is going to continue to maintain close contacts with our partners serving our immigrant communities in order to work towards a clear strategy to support our community in this difficult moment, so more coming on that. I really do think, and I think we've heard that expressed very clearly from this board today, that it is so important that we continue to show up for one another in all the different ways, to look out for our neighbors and to share accurate information so we can be as prepared as possible. The number of people who have taken action, whether it is attending a protest, taking community trainings, looking out for their neighbors, has been inspiring and has been a source of hope and pride in what is happening here in the response, the way that Multnomah County folks are showing up. So I just wanted to appreciate that and try to end on a positive note. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. That concludes today's regular board meeting. There being no further business, we are adjourned.